As the gentle evening light fades over the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, we begin tonight a journey back through time to discover humanity's most mysterious and profound archaeological revelation. A sacred site so ancient, so impossibly sophisticated, that its very existence has rewritten the story of human civilization itself. Let your mind drift back 12,000 years, to a time when the last ice age was ending and our ancestors were taking their first tentative steps toward the complex societies we know today. Close your eyes and feel the weight of millennia settling around you like a soft blanket as we explore Göbekli Tepe, the temple that shouldn't exist yet stands as testament to the remarkable spiritual awakening that may have sparked civilization itself. Picture yourself standing on a limestone plateau in the Taurus Mountains, where the morning mist rises gently from the Harran Plain below and the ancient headwaters of the Euphrates River wind their way through a landscape that has witnessed the dawn of human achievement. This is Göbekli Tepe, a name that means pot-belly hill in Turkish, though the Kurdish people who have long considered this place sacred call it Jaya Mirazan, the Hill of Wishes. Beneath your feet lies buried treasure beyond imagination, the world's oldest known temple complex, constructed by hunter-gatherers who possessed neither writing nor metal tools, yet somehow created monumental architecture that would not be equaled for thousands of years to come. The story of this remarkable discovery begins not in ancient times but in our modern era, when a Kurdish shepherd named Mehmet Yıldız noticed strange stones protruding from his family's farmland in 1994. These were not ordinary rocks scattered by natural forces, but massive limestone pillars carved with intricate reliefs of wild animals and mysterious symbols that seemed to watch silently from their earthen prison. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first laid eyes on these stones, he immediately recognized their significance. Here was evidence of sophisticated construction dating back to the very dawn of human settlement, a discovery that would challenge everything scholars thought they knew about our ancestors' capabilities. What Schmidt uncovered over the following decades of careful excavation defied every assumption about prehistoric human society. Rising from the ancient soil were enormous T-shaped pillars, some standing 18 feet tall and weighing more than 16 tons each, arranged in perfect circles that formed vast ceremonial enclosures. These megalithic monuments had been carved, transported, and erected by people who lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers, following the seasonal migrations of wild herds and gathering the abundant wild grains that grew across the fertile landscape of the post-glacial world. The implications of this discovery rippled through the archaeological community like gentle waves disturbing a peaceful pond. According to conventional wisdom, monumental architecture was supposed to emerge only after humans had developed agriculture, formed permanent settlements, and created the complex social hierarchies necessary to organize massive construction projects. Yet here at Göbekli Tepe, sophisticated temples had been built by people who still lived in the Stone Age, who possessed no knowledge of metallurgy, pottery, or even the wheel, yet somehow coordinated the labor of hundreds or perhaps thousands of individuals to create something magnificent and enduring. The pillars themselves tell a story of remarkable artistic achievement and profound spiritual vision. Each T-shaped monolith has been carefully sculpted to suggest an abstract human form, with arms carved in relief along the sides and hands positioned at what would be the waist of a stylized figure. Some pillars wear carved belts decorated with fox pelts, while others display elaborate loincloths and mysterious symbols that may represent the earliest known attempt at symbolic communication in human history. The craftsmanship required to create these details using only stone tools speaks to levels of skill and patience that challenge our assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities. The animal reliefs that adorn many pillars create a menagerie of creatures that populated the ancient landscape: wild boars with bristling backs, sly foxes, deadly scorpions, soaring vultures, prowling lions, and serpents coiled in eternal vigilance. These are not domestic animals that would later become central to agricultural societies, but the wild fauna that hunter-gatherer communities encountered in their daily lives. The absence of prey animals like deer, which formed an important part of their diet, suggests that the carved creatures held special symbolic significance rather than simply depicting the natural world around them. The peaceful nature of these ancient gatherings becomes apparent when we consider what is not found at Göbekli Tepe. There are no defensive walls, no weapons of war, no evidence of violent conflict or social oppression. Instead, the archaeological record speaks of communal feasting, seasonal celebrations, and spiritual activities that brought together people from across the region in harmony and shared purpose. The abundant animal bones found throughout the site represent not the refuse of daily meals but the remains of great festivals where entire communities gathered to share food, exchange ideas, and participate in ceremonies that strengthen social bonds across vast distances. The seasonal timing of these gatherings reveals sophisticated understanding of natural cycles and celestial movements that guided the rhythm of prehistoric life. The presence of gazelle bones indicates that major festivals coincided with the seasonal migrations of these animals, while the careful astronomical alignment of some enclosures suggests that ancient astronomers tracked the movements of sun, moon, and stars to coordinate religious activities across the scattered hunter-gatherer bands that called this region home. The construction techniques employed at Göbekli Tepe demonstrate engineering knowledge that rivals achievements of much later civilizations. The massive pillars were quarried from the limestone bedrock using techniques that left minimal waste while maximizing the structural integrity of each monolith. The precise arrangement of these pillars in circular enclosures required sophisticated understanding of geometry and architectural principles that enabled stable construction without mortar or metal fasteners. The careful drainage systems that channeled rainwater into carved cisterns show environmental planning that sustained large gatherings during both wet and dry seasons. The social organization necessary for such monumental construction reveals capabilities that prehistorians had never imagined possible among hunter-gatherer societies. Coordinating the labor required to quarry, carve, transport, and erect pillars weighing many tons demanded leadership structures, communication systems, and economic arrangements that could motivate voluntary cooperation among people who maintained no permanent settlements or centralized political authority. This achievement suggests that shared spiritual beliefs and ceremonial activities provided the social cohesion necessary for complex collective projects long before the development of agriculture or urban civilization. The mystery deepens when we consider that after centuries of use and gradual elaboration, the entire complex was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE. This was not abandonment or destruction by enemies, but a careful, systematic covering of the sacred enclosures with tons of stone and earth that preserved the monuments in pristine condition for modern archaeologists to discover. The reasons for this deliberate burial remain unknown, though it coincides with the emergence of agriculture and permanent settlements in the same region, suggesting that changing lifestyles may have required new forms of spiritual expression. The age of Göbekli Tepe continues to astound researchers and visitors alike. Constructed around 9600 BCE, it predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid of Giza by 7,000 years. This timeline places its construction at the very end of the last ice age, when rising temperatures and changing climates created new opportunities and challenges for human communities adapting to a rapidly transforming world. The sophistication of its architecture and artistry suggests that human creativity and spiritual insight had reached remarkable heights long before the development of the technologies we typically associate with advanced civilization. The influence of Göbekli Tepe extended far beyond its immediate vicinity, as similar architectural styles and symbolic motifs appear at other contemporary sites throughout the region. Karahan Tepe, Nevali Kori, and other newly discovered locations suggest that a shared cultural tradition connected communities across vast distances through common beliefs, ceremonial practices, and artistic expressions that created unity without political domination or economic exploitation. Recent discoveries at the site continue to challenge and refine our understanding of this remarkable achievement. Evidence of permanent structures, craft workshops, and even possible residential areas suggests that Göbekli Tepe may have supported year-round populations rather than serving only as a seasonal gathering place for nomadic pilgrims. These findings indicate that the transition from hunting and gathering to settled life may have been more complex and gradual than previously imagined, with religious centers like Göbekli Tepe serving as anchors around which more permanent communities gradually coalesced. The preservation of Göbekli Tepe as a UNESCO World Heritage Site ensures that future generations will be able to study and experience this testament to human achievement, though only about 10% of the site has been excavated so far. Ground-penetrating radar reveals that at least 20 more enclosures lie buried beneath the surface, promising decades of new discoveries that will continue to illuminate the remarkable capabilities of our ancient ancestors. The spiritual significance of Göbekli Tepe resonates across the millennia, reminding us that the human impulse toward transcendence, community, and artistic expression reaches back to the very dawn of our species' greatest achievements. The hunter-gatherers who created this sacred space possessed the same fundamental desires for meaning, beauty, and connection that continue to drive human creativity today. Their patient work with stone and symbol created something that has endured longer than any empire, inspiring wonder and reverence in all who encounter their remarkable legacy. As we begin our exploration of this most ancient of temples, we embark on a journey not just through archaeological evidence and historical interpretation, but through the deepest layers of human experience itself. The wisdom embedded in these standing stones speaks to timeless truths about cooperation, creativity, and the profound human need to create meaning through shared spiritual experience. The gentle hills of southeastern Turkey hold secrets that continue to transform our understanding of human potential, reminding us that the capacity for greatness has always resided in human hearts and minds, waiting only for the right circumstances to manifest in achievements that inspire and humble us across the vast expanses of time that separate us from our remarkable ancestors. As the gentle morning light illuminates the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, we embark tonight on a peaceful journey through the remarkable story of how Göbekli Tepe transformed from a forgotten hillside into one of archaeology's most revolutionary discoveries. Let your mind drift through the decades when this ancient treasure lay hidden beneath farmland, patient and silent, waiting for the right eyes to recognize its true significance. Close your eyes and feel the quiet excitement of discovery unfolding across generations of scholars and local people, whose combined wisdom gradually unveiled humanity's oldest temple from its earthen slumber. Picture yourself in the spring of 1963, when American archaeologist Robert Braidwood and Turkish archaeologist Halle Campbell led a joint expedition across the fertile landscape of southeastern Turkey, methodically surveying ancient tells and mounds that dotted the region like gentle, sleeping giants. Their mission was part of a broader effort to understand how human civilization had first emerged in this cradle of agriculture, where wild grain still grew in abundance and the headwaters of great rivers promised secrets of humanity's transition from hunting and gathering to settled life. The team arrived at a limestone plateau that local Kurdish families called Jaya Mirazan, the Hill of Wishes, though Turkish speakers knew it as Göbekli Tepe, meaning pot-belly hill for its distinctive, rounded profile against the horizon. The YLDZ family, who had farmed this land for generations, welcomed the foreign researchers with the hospitality that characterized this ancient crossroads region, sharing stories of strange stones that occasionally emerged from their fields during plowing season. Watch as the archaeological team spreads across the hillside, carefully collecting surface artifacts and making detailed notes about what appeared to be a typical Neolithic settlement mound. American archaeologist Peter Benedict, working methodically through the pottery sherds and stone tools scattered across the surface, recognized clear evidence of Aceramic Neolithic occupation, the crucial period when humans first began creating permanent settlements but had not yet developed pottery technology. The stone tools Benedict collected told a story of sophisticated craftsmanship from around 9,000 years ago, when skilled flint workers had shaped obsidian and flint into elegant blades and scrapers using techniques that revealed generations of accumulated knowledge. These artifacts placed the site firmly within the revolutionary period when humans were first experimenting with agriculture and permanent settlements, making it potentially significant for understanding the Neolithic Revolution. However, the most intriguing discoveries were the massive stone slabs that protruded from various points across the hillside. These weathered limestone blocks, some clearly shaped by human hands, rose from the earth at regular intervals in patterns that suggested deliberate placement rather than natural geological processes. To the 1963 survey team, these appeared to be grave markers, large tombstones marking an ancient cemetery that had been used for centuries by Neolithic peoples. This interpretation made perfect sense given the archaeological knowledge of the time. Prehistoric societies were known to mark important burial sites with standing stones, and the regular spacing of the Göbekli Tepe slabs fit this pattern beautifully. The survey team carefully documented the positions of visible stones, photographed the most elaborate examples, and filed their report with the confident assessment that they had discovered a significant Neolithic cemetery that deserved further investigation when time and funding permitted. For 31 years, Göbekli Tepe slumbered again beneath the patient attention of the YLDZ family, who continued their agricultural work while occasionally uncovering additional stone fragments that they dutifully reported to the Anatolia Museum. The farmers knew their land held ancient secrets. Generations of local Kurdish tradition had always recognized this hill as sacred ground, but the true magnitude of what lay buried remained hidden beneath centuries of accumulated soil and debris. The transformation began in October 1994. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt arrived in the region carrying revolutionary ideas about prehistoric capabilities and a keen eye trained by years of excavation at Nevali Kori, another remarkable Neolithic site where he had discovered sophisticated stone architecture dating back 10,000 years. Schmidt was not content to accept conventional wisdom about hunter-gatherer limitations, and his experience had taught him to recognize the subtle signs of monumental architecture even when barely visible above ground. Schmidt's journey to Göbekli Tepe began with a simple question asked in the villages around Anatolia: "Do you know of any hills where we might find worked flint?" The response came from multiple sources, all pointing toward the distinctive mound that local families had known for generations held archaeological treasures. Momet YLDZ, whose family owned the land containing the site, personally guided Schmidt to the hilltop and showed him the strange stones that had puzzled visitors for decades. The moment Schmidt laid eyes on the limestone slabs protruding from the YLDZ family fields, his archaeological intuition recognized something extraordinary. These were not grave markers scattered across an ancient cemetery, but the tops of massive megaliths, prehistoric monuments whose true scale lay hidden beneath the accumulated soil of millennia. The distinctive T-shaped profiles visible on several stones matched architectural elements he had discovered at Nevali Kori, suggesting that Göbekli Tepe might contain similar monumental architecture on an even grander scale. The careful excavation that began in 1995 revealed the truth that would revolutionize archaeology and challenge every assumption about prehistoric human capabilities. As Schmidt's team methodically removed centuries of accumulated debris, the grave markers were revealed to be the uppermost portions of massive stone pillars, some standing 18 feet tall and weighing more than 16 tons. These weren't scattered tombstones but carefully arranged megalithic enclosures that represented the most sophisticated prehistoric architecture ever discovered. The first complete pillar to emerge from the earth took Schmidt's breath away. Rising from the limestone bedrock like a giant sentinel, the T-shaped monolith displayed carved arms positioned along its sides and hands folded across what would be the waist of a stylized human figure. The craftsmanship was extraordinary: smooth surfaces, precise geometric proportions, and artistic details that would have challenged craftsmen working with metal tools. Yet these monuments had been created by people who possessed only stone implements. As excavation continued, the true magnitude of Göbekli Tepe gradually revealed itself. The site contained not one or two megalithic structures, but at least 20 circular enclosures, each surrounded by massive T-shaped pillars arranged with mathematical precision around central monuments that dwarfed anything previously discovered from the Neolithic period. The implications were staggering. This was not just another prehistoric settlement, but the world's oldest known temple complex, created by hunter-gatherers who had achieved architectural sophistication that wouldn't be matched for thousands of years. The international archaeological community initially greeted these discoveries with skepticism that gradually transformed into amazement as the evidence mounted. Carbon dating confirmed that the monuments were indeed 11,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by 6 millennia and the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years. The sophisticated construction techniques, elaborate artistic carvings, and sheer scale of the project challenged fundamental assumptions about what prehistoric peoples could accomplish without agriculture, metallurgy, or complex social hierarchies. Schmidt's careful documentation of each discovery gradually built an overwhelming case for recognizing Göbekli Tepe as a revolutionary site that demanded complete reassessment of human prehistory. The evidence revealed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, engineering, and artistic expression among peoples who conventional wisdom suggested were barely capable of creating permanent settlements. The peaceful nature of the site, no weapons, no defensive structures, no evidence of warfare, suggested that these remarkable achievements had been accomplished through cooperation rather than coercion. The growing recognition of Göbekli Tepe's significance attracted scholars from around the world, each contributing specialized knowledge that deepened understanding of this remarkable achievement. Zooarchaeologists analyzed the abundant animal bones to reveal patterns of seasonal feasting that brought together communities from vast distances. Art historians studied the carved reliefs to decode symbolic messages that connected earthly life to cosmic rhythms. Engineers marveled at construction techniques that enabled precise positioning of massive megaliths using only human labor and stone tools. The Kurdish community that had always revered this hill as sacred ground found their traditional knowledge validated by modern archaeology. The name Jaya Mirazan, Hill of Wishes, took on new meaning as scholars recognized that this had indeed been a place where prehistoric peoples came to make spiritual connections that transcended ordinary daily life. The integration of local knowledge with academic research created a collaborative approach that honored both scientific methodology and traditional wisdom. Media attention gradually transformed Göbekli Tepe from an archaeological curiosity into a global phenomenon that captured public imagination and challenged popular understanding of human prehistory. National Geographic, BBC, and other major outlets brought the story to millions of people worldwide, while scholarly publications debated the implications for understanding the Neolithic Revolution and the emergence of complex societies. The designation of Göbekli Tepe as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2018 marked the full recognition of its outstanding universal value as one of the first manifestations of human-made monumental architecture. This international acknowledgement ensured protection and funding for continued research while establishing Göbekli Tepe's place among humanity's most significant cultural achievements alongside Stonehenge, the pyramids, and other world wonders. Schmidt's tragic death in 2014 marked the end of an era, but his groundbreaking work had established foundations for continuing research under the direction of Turkish prehistorian Necmi Karel. The joint project involving Istanbul University and Lurfa Museum and the German Archaeological Institute ensures that excavation and analysis continue using the most advanced techniques available while respecting the sacred nature of the site. Recent technological advances have revealed that the known monuments represent only a small fraction of what lies buried beneath Göbekli Tepe. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetic surveys show at least 20 additional enclosures waiting to be excavated, promising decades of future discoveries that will continue to expand understanding of this remarkable achievement. Current estimates suggest that only 10% of the site has been investigated, leaving vast treasures still hidden beneath the patient earth. The transformation of local infrastructure around Göbekli Tepe reflects its emergence as a major cultural destination attracting visitors from around the world. The new museum and visitor center provide educational facilities that enable millions of people annually to learn about this remarkable site while protecting the ancient monuments from damage due to increased tourism. The economic benefits for local communities demonstrate how archaeological discovery can create sustainable development opportunities that honor cultural heritage. Contemporary research at Göbekli Tepe continues to yield surprising discoveries that refine understanding of how this remarkable site functioned. Evidence of permanent residential structures, craft workshops, and water management systems suggests that the distinction between temple and settlement may have been less clear than initially thought. These findings indicate that the emergence of complex society was more gradual and multifaceted than simple models of the Neolithic Revolution had suggested. As we observe this remarkable journey from dismissed cemetery to world wonder, we witness the power of careful observation, persistent curiosity, and collaborative research to transform human understanding of our shared heritage. The patient work of multiple generations, Kurdish farmers who preserve traditional knowledge, international scholars who recognize significance, and contemporary researchers who continue unveiling secrets, demonstrates how cultural discovery emerges through community effort rather than individual brilliance. The story of Göbekli Tepe's recognition reminds us that the most important discoveries often hide in plain sight, waiting for the right combination of knowledge, technology, and wisdom to reveal their true significance. The hillside that seemed ordinary to some eyes proved extraordinary to others, teaching us that wonder surrounds us everywhere if we possess the patience and insight to recognize it. As the gentle evening light fades over the ancient landscape of southeastern Turkey, we step tonight into the remarkable world of the hunter-gatherer peoples who accomplished what should have been impossible, creating monumental architecture without agriculture, permanent settlements, or any of the social institutions we associate with complex civilization. Let your mind drift back 12,000 years to experience life as it was lived during the pre-pottery Neolithic, when small bands of mobile families moved gracefully across a landscape of abundance, following seasonal rhythms that had sustained human life for countless generations. Close your eyes and feel the peaceful harmony of communities that possessed neither cities nor farms yet somehow coordinated the most ambitious construction project their world had ever seen. Picture yourself awakening at dawn in a hunter-gatherer camp nestled in the rolling foothills of the Taurus Mountains, where the morning mist rises gently from the headwaters of the Euphrates and the air carries the sweet scent of wild grasses heavy with dew. This is the world of the Göbekli Tepe builders, a landscape transformed by the warming climate that followed the last ice age, creating conditions of unprecedented abundance for the mobile peoples who called this region home. The retreating glacier had left behind fertile steppes covered with wild cereals, open woodlands rich with game, and reliable water sources that supported both human communities and the diverse wildlife they depended upon for survival. The climate of this remarkable period was warmer and wetter than today's arid conditions, creating an environment that archaeologists describe as resembling an ancient Garden of Eden. Wild einkorn wheat, barley, and other cereals grew in dense stands across the landscape, providing abundant carbohydrates that could be harvested without the back-breaking labor of cultivation. Herds of gazelle, wild sheep, and goats grazed the steppes in seasonal migrations that brought protein-rich hunting opportunities directly to the camps of waiting families. Pistachio and almond groves dotted the hillsides, offering nuts that could be stored through winter months to supplement the bounty of other seasons. Watch as the families who would build Göbekli Tepe begin their daily routines, moving with the quiet efficiency that characterized hunter-gatherer life throughout human prehistory. The women and older children gather around grinding stones, processing the wild cereals that formed the foundation of their diet despite their lack of agriculture. Using techniques perfected over generations, they transform tough grain husks into nutritious flour through patient grinding, soaking, and cooking methods that extracted maximum nutrition from wild plants that their descendants would later domesticate into modern crops. The social organization of these remarkable people challenges every assumption about what hunter-gatherers could accomplish without permanent settlements or centralized authority. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Göbekli Tepe builders lived in small, mobile bands of perhaps 20 to 30 individuals. Extended families connected by kinship ties that enabled cooperation across vast distances and different seasons. Yet somehow these scattered groups coordinated their efforts to create architectural monuments that required the labor of hundreds of people working together with shared vision and purpose. The seasonal round that governed their lives followed patterns established over thousands of years, as communities moved across the landscape in response to the availability of resources and the needs of the animals they hunted. Spring brought the gazelle migrations that provided opportunities for large communal hunts, when multiple bands would gather at traditional meeting places to coordinate their hunting strategies while strengthening social bonds through shared feasts and ceremonies. Summer offered abundant plant foods and smaller game that could sustain individual families during periods of dispersal across their territories. The remarkable abundance of this ancient environment enabled population densities that were unprecedented among hunter-gatherer societies. Rather than the sparse populations we might expect from mobile peoples, The Göbekli Tepe region supported communities large enough to undertake massive construction projects while maintaining the flexible social structures that characterized pre-agricultural life. The key to this abundance lay in the diversity of available resources: wild cereals, nuts, seasonal fruits, reliable game populations, and aquatic resources from streams and seasonal wetlands. The hunting techniques employed by these skilled peoples demonstrated sophisticated understanding of animal behavior and environmental patterns that enabled reliable protein acquisition without depleting wildlife populations. The predominance of gazelle bones at Göbekli Tepe reflects specialized hunting strategies that took advantage of seasonal migrations, when large herds could be intercepted at traditional crossing points and harvested through coordinated community effort. The bones show evidence of careful butchering and processing that maximized the use of every part of each animal. Tool technology among the Göbekli Tepe builders had reached remarkable levels of sophistication despite their reliance on stone, bone, and organic materials. The flint tools recovered from the site display craftsmanship that rivals the finest work of later periods, with razor-sharp blades, precisely shaped scrapers, and specialized implements designed for specific tasks in construction, hunting, and food processing. The obsidian tools found at the site demonstrate trade relationships that connected these communities to volcanic sources hundreds of miles away. The artistic capabilities revealed in the Göbekli Tepe monuments suggest that hunter-gatherer societies possessed far more complex cultural lives than scholars had previously imagined. The sophisticated animal carvings, abstract symbols, and architectural planning evident throughout the site demonstrate levels of artistic vision and technical skill that required generations of accumulated knowledge and specialized training. These weren't simple hunter-gatherer bands but communities that had developed rich traditions of artistic expression and symbolic communication. The religious beliefs that motivated the construction of Göbekli Tepe probably emerged from shamanic traditions that characterized hunter-gatherer spirituality throughout human prehistory. The animal imagery that dominates the site, vultures, scorpions, wild boars, snakes, and lions, represents not the prey animals that provided daily sustenance but the dangerous predators and scavengers that inhabited the spiritual landscape of dreams, visions, and ceremonial experience. This suggests religious practices focused on communication with spirit worlds that govern the forces of life, death, and renewal. The cooperative labor required for Göbekli Tepe's construction reveals social institutions that enabled voluntary coordination of massive projects without the coercive authority structures that characterized later agricultural civilizations. Archaeological evidence suggests that the work was accomplished through consensual cooperation, with communities contributing labor during seasonal gatherings that combined religious ceremony with practical construction activities. The peaceful nature of these efforts, no evidence of forced labor or violent coercion, demonstrates alternative models of social organization based on shared spiritual beliefs rather than political domination. The timing of major construction activities probably coincided with seasonal abundance when communities could afford to divert energy from subsistence activities to monumental building projects. The gazelle hunting seasons would have provided both the meat necessary to feed large work crews and the social occasions when multiple bands gathered with time available for non-subsistence activities. The construction of Göbekli Tepe thus represents not a departure from hunter-gatherer life, but its logical culmination during periods of unprecedented abundance. The knowledge systems possessed by these remarkable peoples included sophisticated understanding of astronomy, geology, and engineering principles that enabled architectural achievements previously thought impossible without agricultural civilizations. The precise alignment of some enclosures with celestial phenomena demonstrates astronomical knowledge that required generations of careful observation and record-keeping. The quarrying and transportation of massive limestone blocks reveals engineering capabilities that anticipate techniques not formally developed until much later periods. The social networks that connected Göbekli Tepe communities extended across hundreds of miles, linking bands throughout the upper Euphrates Valley and beyond through kinship ties, trade relationships, and shared ceremonial traditions. The standardized artistic styles and architectural features found at multiple sites throughout the region suggest cultural unity that transcended local differences while maintaining the flexible social structures that enabled adaptation to diverse environmental conditions. The gradual transition toward agricultural life may have been influenced by the success of the Göbekli Tepe gatherings themselves, as increasingly large populations attracted to seasonal ceremonies began to stress the carrying capacity of traditional hunting and gathering practices. The development of plant cultivation techniques probably emerged from intensive processing of wild cereals to feed the crowds that gathered for construction activities and religious festivals, eventually leading to full domestication of the crops that would support permanent settlements. The decline of traditional hunter-gatherer life in the Göbekli Tepe region coincided with the site's eventual abandonment and burial around 8000 BCE, suggesting that the changing social conditions that accompanied agricultural development made the old ceremonial traditions seem obsolete or inappropriate. The careful burial of the monuments demonstrates that this transition was managed deliberately by people who honored their past while choosing to embrace new ways of life that agricultural abundance made possible. The legacy of the Göbekli Tepe builders challenges fundamental assumptions about human social evolution and the relationship between technology and cultural achievement. Their ability to accomplish sophisticated architectural projects while maintaining hunter-gatherer social flexibility demonstrates that complex cultural achievements don't require agricultural foundations or urban civilizations. Instead, they represent the flowering of human creativity and cooperation under conditions of environmental abundance and social harmony. The environmental wisdom demonstrated by these remarkable peoples offers valuable lessons for contemporary societies struggling with sustainability challenges. Their ability to maintain large populations without depleting natural resources demonstrates management techniques that preserved ecological abundance across generations of human occupation. The integration of spiritual beliefs with environmental stewardship created worldviews that understood human communities as part of larger natural systems rather than their masters. As we contemplate the achievements of these ancient hunter-gatherer builders, we witness human potential expressed through cooperation rather than competition, spiritual vision rather than material accumulation. and harmony with natural systems rather than their exploitation. The communities that created Göbekli Tepe possessed neither cities nor empires, yet accomplished something that required coordination, vision, and artistic achievement that rivals any human civilization. The gentle landscape of ancient Anatolia nurtured human communities that combined practical wisdom with spiritual insight, creating monuments that have endured longer than kingdoms while demonstrating that the highest human achievements often emerge not from complexity but from the simple wisdom of people working together towards shared dreams of beauty, meaning, and connection to forces larger than individual ambition. As the gentle morning light illuminates the ancient quarries carved into the limestone plateau of Göbekli Tepe, we embark tonight on a peaceful journey into one of humanity's greatest engineering mysteries. How Stone Age peoples moved massive 16-ton pillars across rugged terrain using nothing but human ingenuity, rope, and wooden tools. Let your mind drift into the patient world of prehistoric engineers who solved problems that would challenge modern construction crews, creating monuments of breathtaking scale through techniques so elegant that their secrets are only now being understood. Close your eyes and feel the quiet determination of ancient builders who transformed raw stone into eternal architecture through wisdom, cooperation, and an understanding of physics that emerged from generations of accumulated knowledge. Picture yourself standing in the limestone quarries that lie just beyond the sacred enclosures of Göbekli Tepe, where the morning mist reveals the ghostly outlines of massive T-shaped pillars still partially attached to the living bedrock. These ancient workshops tell the story of remarkable engineering achievements accomplished without metal tools, wheeled vehicles, or draft animals. Innovations that wouldn't appear in this region for thousands of years to come. The quarrying techniques employed here demonstrate sophisticated understanding of stone mechanics that enabled prehistoric craftsmen to extract perfect monoliths from the earth with minimal waste and maximum structural integrity. The process began with careful selection of quarrying sites where the limestone possessed the ideal characteristics for monumental construction. The Göbekli Tepe builders understood that not all stone was suitable for their purposes. They needed limestone that was hard enough to hold fine carved details yet soft enough to be worked with flint and obsidian tools. The geological knowledge required to identify these perfect deposits demonstrates scientific understanding that preceded formal geology by thousands of years, yet enabled these ancient engineers to locate exactly the right materials for their ambitious projects. Watch a skilled craftsman begin the patient work of liberating a massive pillar from its rocky matrix, using techniques that modern archaeologists have reconstructed through careful analysis of tool marks and unfinished monuments. The process started with defining the pillar's outline through careful chiseling using hard stone hammers and bronze-hard flint chisels that could cut clean lines in the relatively soft limestone. The workers created deep grooves around the intended pillar, gradually separating it from the surrounding bedrock through months of patient chipping and careful planning. The T-shaped profile that characterizes Göbekli Tepe pillars was not merely decorative but served important structural and symbolic functions that demonstrate sophisticated architectural planning. The broad horizontal head of each pillar provided stability while creating the distinctive anthropomorphic silhouette that gave these monuments their human-like appearance. The vertical body section was carefully proportioned to support enormous weight while maintaining the precise dimensions necessary for accurate positioning within the circular enclosures. The quarrying process itself reveals understanding of structural engineering principles that enabled extraction of intact monoliths weighing up to 16 tons. Rather than simply chipping away stone randomly, the builders used controlled fracturing techniques that followed natural stress lines in the limestone, ensuring clean separations that left smooth surfaces requiring minimal finishing work. The evidence suggests they understood concepts of load distribution, stress concentration, and material strength that wouldn't be formally codified until the development of modern engineering sciences. Transportation of these massive monuments across the broken terrain surrounding Göbekli Tepe required engineering solutions that challenge our assumptions about Stone Age capabilities. The largest pillars weigh more than 3 African elephants, yet they were moved distances of several hundred meters across ground that included steep slopes, rocky outcrops, and seasonal muddy areas that would bog down even modern heavy equipment. The absence of roads, wheeled vehicles, or beast-of-burden animals meant that every pound of stone had to be moved through human muscle power alone. Recent experimental archaeology has revealed that the most likely transportation method involved sophisticated wooden rollers, ramps, and lever systems that enabled teams of hundreds of people to move massive stones with surprising efficiency. The abundant oak forests that surrounded prehistoric Göbekli Tepe provided ideal materials for creating strong wooden rollers that could support enormous weights while rolling smoothly across prepared pathways. These rollers were probably kept constantly wet to reduce friction and prevent cracking under the enormous loads they carried. The coordination required for moving 16-ton monoliths reveals social organization capabilities that rival any ancient civilization. Archaeological estimates suggest that moving the largest pillars required coordinated effort from 300 to 500 people working in perfectly synchronized teams. Rope pullers, roller movers, pathway clearers, and supervisors who coordinated the complex choreography necessary to prevent disasters that could crush workers or damage irreplaceable monuments. This level of cooperation among hunter-gatherer communities had never been documented before the Göbekli Tepe discoveries. The ramp systems used to position pillars within the sacred enclosures demonstrate understanding of mechanical advantage principles that enabled precise placement of massive monuments in exact positions determined by astronomical and ceremonial requirements. These earthen ramps, built with carefully calculated slopes and reinforced with stone retaining walls, allowed teams of workers to raise multi-ton pillars to their final positions using long wooden levers and coordinated pulling techniques that multiplied human strength through mechanical advantage. The precision with which pillars were positioned within each enclosure reveals surveying techniques that enabled accurate measurement and alignment without sophisticated instruments. The builders understood geometric principles that allowed them to create perfect circles, maintain consistent spacing between pillars, and achieve the precise orientations necessary for astronomical alignments. This mathematical knowledge probably emerged from generations of practical experience with construction projects, gradually accumulating into sophisticated engineering traditions. The foundation systems that support these massive monuments demonstrate understanding of soil mechanics and load distribution that prevented settling or tilting over thousands of years. Each pillar was carefully positioned on prepared foundations that distributed weight evenly across stable bedrock, while drainage systems channeled water away from the bases to prevent erosion that could undermine structural integrity. The engineering solutions employed here wouldn't be improved upon until much later periods when metal tools and advanced mathematics became available. The lifting techniques used to erect vertical pillars required mechanical systems that enabled controlled raising of monuments that could easily crush workers if they fell during installation. Recent analysis suggests the builders used A-frame lifting systems constructed from massive timber beams, combined with rope and pulley arrangements that provided mechanical advantage sufficient to raise 16-ton pillars safely into vertical positions. These lifting systems required engineering knowledge that anticipated techniques not formally developed until much later periods. The sequence of construction within each enclosure reveals sophisticated project management that enabled efficient completion of complex multi-phase building programs. Archaeological evidence suggests that the central pillars were erected first, providing reference points for accurate positioning of the surrounding monuments. The careful coordination required to complete these projects without modern communication or scheduling tools demonstrates organizational capabilities that challenge assumptions about prehistoric social complexity. The tool technology employed for shaping and finishing the pillars represents the pinnacle of Stone Age craftsmanship, with flint and obsidian implements that achieved cutting precision comparable to metal tools. The smooth surfaces and intricate carved details visible on Göbekli Tepe monuments required specialized tools designed for specific tasks: rough shaping tools for initial sculpture work, fine finishing implements for smooth surfaces, and precision carving tools for the elaborate animal reliefs that decorated many pillars. The artistic planning evident throughout the site demonstrates integration of engineering and aesthetic considerations that created monuments serving both structural and symbolic functions. The carved reliefs of animals, geometric patterns, and abstract symbols were not merely decorative additions but integral elements of architectural designs that conveyed complex religious and social meanings while maintaining structural integrity necessary for long-term stability. The water management systems that supported construction activities reveal understanding of hydraulic engineering principles that enabled sustained work by large crews during dry seasons. The builders created cisterns, channels, and storage systems that collected rainwater and managed runoff to provide reliable water supplies for both construction workers and the lime mortar used in some aspects of monument construction. These systems demonstrate environmental engineering capabilities that wouldn't be formally recognized until much later periods. The precision with which unfinished pillars remain attached to bedrock in the quarries provides direct evidence of the planning and control that characterized every aspect of construction. These monuments were abandoned at various stages of completion, creating an archaeological laboratory where researchers can study ancient techniques in detail. The tool marks visible on unfinished surfaces reveal step-by-step processes that enable reconstruction of entire construction sequences. The seasonal timing of major construction activities probably coincided with periods when large numbers of people gathered for ceremonial purposes, providing the labor force necessary for moving massive monuments. The integration of construction work with religious festivals created social contexts where community members could contribute to monumental projects while participating in the spiritual activities that gave meaning to their collective efforts. The safety considerations evident throughout the construction process demonstrate concern for worker welfare that prevented the accidents that could easily have occurred during such dangerous operations. The careful preparation of pathways, the gradual approach to lifting heavy loads, and the systematic approach to complex operations all suggest construction management that prioritized human safety alongside project completion. The legacy of Göbekli Tepe's construction techniques influenced building traditions throughout the region for thousands of years. As the engineering knowledge developed here spread through cultural exchange to communities across the ancient Near East. The megalithic traditions that later appeared at sites throughout the Mediterranean world probably trace their origins to innovations first developed by the remarkable engineers who created humanity's oldest temple complex. As we contemplate these ancient engineering achievements, we witness human ingenuity applied to challenges that seemed impossible yet were overcome through patient observation, careful planning, and the kind of cooperative effort that emerges when communities unite around shared visions of creating something magnificent and enduring. The gentle hills of Göbekli Tepe continue to yield secrets about human capabilities that existed long before the development of the technologies we associate with advanced civilization, reminding us that wisdom, creativity, and engineering skill represent fundamental human capabilities that transcend any particular historical period or technological level. As the gentle evening shadows lengthen across the ancient pillars of Göbekli Tepe, we embark tonight on a peaceful journey into the mysterious world of humanity's earliest symbolic language, the intricate carvings and sacred images that transform cold limestone into a library of ancient wisdom waiting to be deciphered. Let your mind drift into the patient world of prehistoric artists who used stone as their canvas to preserve messages that have endured for 12,000 years, speaking across the vast gulf of time about spiritual beliefs, natural knowledge, and cosmic understanding that guided the lives of our remarkable ancestors. Close your eyes and feel the quiet reverence of ancient craftsmen whose delicate chiseling created an eternal dialogue between earth and sky, human and divine, mortal life and timeless truth. Picture yourself standing before Pillar 43 in Enclosure D, perhaps the most enigmatic monument in all of Göbekli Tepe, where the morning light reveals a complex tableau of carved creatures that seem to dance across the limestone surface in eternal celebration of forces beyond ordinary human understanding. This remarkable pillar, which scholars have nicknamed the Vulture Stone, displays a menagerie of animals arranged in careful composition that may represent the oldest known artistic narrative in human history, a stone story that connects earthly life to celestial movements through symbolic language that predates writing by thousands of years. The central figure dominating this ancient composition is a magnificent vulture, its wings spread wide in flight or protective embrace, rendered with Anatomical accuracy that reveals careful observation of these powerful scavenger birds that soared above the prehistoric landscape. The vulture's prominent position suggests profound symbolic significance, as these creatures served as intermediaries between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, carrying souls skyward while cleansing the earth of mortal remains through their sacred feeding habits. Watch as your eyes move across the pillar's surface, discovering the subtle creatures that surround the great vulture. Scorpions with curved tails raised in defensive postures. Serpents coiled in eternal vigilance. Wild boars bristling with aggressive energy, and geometric symbols that may represent stars, constellations, or abstract concepts that modern viewers can only guess at. Each element was carved with meticulous attention to detail using flint tools that required exceptional skill to achieve the smooth curves and precise lines visible in the finished reliefs. The scorpion imagery that appears throughout Göbekli Tepe carries particular fascination for modern researchers attempting to decode these ancient messages. These arachnids, rendered with scientific accuracy that captures their segmented bodies and characteristic curved tails, appear on multiple pillars in various contexts that suggest complex symbolic meanings. Some scholars propose astronomical interpretations, noting that the constellation Scorpius would have been visible in the night sky during the site's active period, while others suggest more earthly symbolism related to death, rebirth, and the dangerous forces that governed ancient life. The serpent motifs carved throughout the site represent another recurring theme that connects Göbekli Tepe to universal human symbolism found in cultures worldwide. These sinuous creatures, depicted with careful attention to their scales and coiling movements, probably represented renewal and transformation. The eternal cycle of death and rebirth symbolized by snakes' ability to shed their skin and emerge renewed. The placement of serpent carvings near the bases of pillars suggests they may have served as guardians or protectors of the sacred spaces enclosed by the massive monuments. The wild boar reliefs scattered across various pillars throughout the complex demonstrate the artistic sophistication achieved by prehistoric craftsmen working with stone tools. These powerful animals, rendered with bristling coats and aggressive postures that capture their dangerous nature, inhabited the oak forests that surrounded ancient Göbekli Tepe. The careful attention to anatomical details, the distinctive snouts, small eyes, and muscular bodies, reveals artistic traditions that combined accurate observation with symbolic meaning. The geometric symbols that accompany these animal figures present some of the most intriguing puzzles for researchers attempting to understand Göbekli Tepe's symbolic language. Crescents, circles, H-shaped figures, and abstract designs that resist easy interpretation appear throughout the site in contexts that suggest deliberate symbolic communication. These may represent the earliest known attempts at symbolic notation, predating the development of writing systems by thousands of years while serving similar functions of preserving and transmitting complex ideas. The anthropomorphic features carved on many pillars create the most direct connection between these ancient monuments and their human creators. The carved arms positioned along the sides of T-shaped pillars, with hands folded across what would be the waist of stylized human figures, transform abstract architecture into personified beings that may represent ancestors, deities, or spiritual forces that governed ancient life. The addition of carved belts, loincloths, and fox fur garments provides glimpses into prehistoric clothing and personal ornamentation. The fox imagery that appears on several pillar belts suggests these animals held special significance for the Göbekli Tepe builders beyond their role as sources of fur for clothing. Archaeological evidence from the site includes numerous fox burials, often in association with human remains, indicating that these intelligent creatures may have served as spiritual companions or totemic animals that connected human communities to the natural world through sacred relationships that transcended ordinary predator-prey dynamics. The seasonal timing of the animals depicted in Göbekli Tepe carvings may encode ancient astronomical knowledge that connected earthly ceremonies to celestial cycles. Recent research has proposed that the animal reliefs represent constellations visible in the prehistoric night sky, creating a stone calendar that enabled ancient astronomers to track seasonal changes and coordinate religious festivals with cosmic events. This interpretation would make Göbekli Tepe not just humanity's oldest temple but also its oldest observatory. The artistic techniques employed by Göbekli Tepe carvers demonstrate mastery of sculptural principles that wouldn't be formally codified until much later periods in art history. The use of raised and sunken relief, the careful attention to proportion and composition, and the integration of multiple figures into unified narrative scenes reveal aesthetic sensibilities that anticipated artistic traditions developed thousands of years later by classical civilizations. The preservation of these carved messages results from the remarkable decision to bury the entire complex around 8000 BCE, protecting the limestone surfaces from weathering that would have erased these delicate details over subsequent millennia. This deliberate burial suggests that the symbolic messages carved into the pillars were considered so sacred that they required protection even when the active use of the site was ending, preserving humanity's earliest artistic statements for modern discovery and interpretation. The interpretation of Göbekli Tepe's symbolic language remains an active area of research as scholars apply new analytical techniques to decode messages that may contain keys to understanding prehistoric religious beliefs, astronomical knowledge, and social organization. Computer analysis of carving patterns, statistical studies of symbol distribution, and cross-cultural comparison with other ancient symbolic systems gradually reveal layers of meaning that transform these stone surfaces into libraries of prehistoric wisdom. The cross-cultural parallels found between Göbekli Tepe symbols and later artistic traditions suggest that the symbolic language developed here influenced human cultural expression for thousands of years after the site's abandonment. Similar animal motifs, geometric patterns, and anthropomorphic representations appear in artifacts from across the ancient Near East, indicating that the artistic innovations pioneered at Göbekli Tepe spread throughout the region through cultural exchange and migration. The shamanic interpretations proposed by some researchers suggest that the carved animals represent spirit guides and visionary experiences that characterized prehistoric religious practices. The emphasis on dangerous predators rather than prey animals, the presence of creatures associated with death and transformation, and the integration of these images with architectural spaces designed for ceremony all support theories that Göbekli Tepe served as a center for shamanistic practices that connected human consciousness to spiritual realms. The storytelling function of Göbekli Tepe carvings may have served educational purposes that preserved essential cultural knowledge across generations of oral tradition. The complex narrative scenes carved into pillars could have functioned as memory aids that helped storytellers maintain accuracy while transmitting myths, legends, and practical knowledge that sustained prehistoric communities. This interpretation positions the carved pillars as three-dimensional books that recorded human wisdom in permanent stone libraries. The technical challenges involved in creating these detailed carvings using only stone tools required specialized craftsmen who devoted years to mastering their artistic techniques. The smooth surfaces, precise lines, and delicate details visible throughout the site demonstrate skill levels that required dedicated training and practice that could only have been supported by communities wealthy enough to maintain non-subsistent specialists. This evidence challenges assumptions about hunter-gatherer social organization while revealing cultural complexity that rivaled later agricultural civilizations. The symbolic density of Göbekli Tepe carvings, the careful arrangement of multiple animals, geometric symbols, and anthropomorphic features within unified compositions, suggests sophisticated conceptual frameworks that integrated astronomical knowledge, religious beliefs, and artistic expression into comprehensive worldviews that guided prehistoric life. These weren't simple decorative additions but integral components of architectural designs that transformed functional spaces into cosmic theaters where human communities could participate in spiritual dramas that connected earthly life to universal forces. The continuing discovery of new carved elements as excavation progresses demonstrates that the symbolic language preserved at Göbekli Tepe represents only a small sample of what may have been a vast prehistoric artistic tradition. Recent discoveries of carved reliefs at related sites throughout the region suggest that the symbolic innovations pioneered at Göbekli Tepe influenced artistic development across the ancient Near East, creating cultural traditions that persisted for thousands of years. As we contemplate these ancient messages carved in stone, we witness humanity's earliest attempts to preserve complex ideas in permanent form, creating symbolic languages that enabled communication across vast expanses of time and space. The patient work of prehistoric artists who transformed raw limestone into eternal libraries of symbolic wisdom demonstrates the fundamental human need to create meaning, preserve knowledge, and communicate insights that transcend individual lifespans. The gentle morning light that illuminates these carved messages today reveals the same symbols that guided ancient ceremonies, preserved essential knowledge, and connected prehistoric communities to cosmic forces that governed their understanding of life, death, and spiritual transcendence. In studying these remarkable carvings, we participate in humanity's oldest conversation about meaning, purpose, and our place in the larger universe that surrounds and sustains all earthly life. As the gentle stars begin to appear in the darkening sky above ancient Göbekli Tepe, we step tonight into the sacred world of humanity's first pilgrimage site, where 12,000 years ago people traveled hundreds of miles across rugged terrain to participate in ceremonies that may have given birth to organized religion itself. Let your mind drift into the peaceful rhythms of prehistoric spiritual life, when seasonal gatherings transformed this limestone plateau into a cosmic theater where earth and sky, mortal and divine, human community and natural forces converged in harmony. Close your eyes and feel the quiet reverence of ancient pilgrims whose patient journeys to this sacred hill created the world's oldest temple complex, establishing spiritual traditions that would echo through human consciousness for millennia to come. Picture yourself walking the ancient paths that converged on Göbekli Tepe from all directions, following routes worn smooth by countless generations of pilgrims who made this journey as part of seasonal cycles that governed prehistoric life. The approaching summer solstice draws scattered hunter-gatherer bands from across the upper Euphrates Valley, their temporary camps scattered across the landscape like stars reflecting the constellations that guide their astronomical observations. From the Zagros Mountains to the east, the Taurus Ranges to the north, and the Syrian steppes to the south, extended families begin their careful preparation for the most important spiritual gathering of their year. The pilgrimage to Göbekli Tepe was not a casual visit but a sacred obligation that required months of preparation and coordination among communities separated by vast distances and diverse local traditions. Archaeological evidence suggests that these journeys were timed to coincide with celestial events and seasonal changes that held deep spiritual significance for prehistoric peoples. The summer solstice, when the sun reached its northernmost position and daylight stretched to its maximum length, provided the astronomical anchor around which the greatest festivals were organized. Watch as pilgrimage parties gather their most precious possessions for the journey to the sacred hill, carefully crafted obsidian blades that will serve as offerings to the spirits of the place. Elaborate personal ornaments that demonstrate their community's skill and prosperity, and special foods that will contribute to the great feasts that are central to Göbekli Tepe ceremonies. The women weave baskets and prepare dried foods for the journey, while the men craft tools and weapons that will serve both practical and ceremonial purposes during their time at the temple complex. The journey itself was an integral part of the spiritual experience, as pilgrims moved slowly across landscapes rich with sacred meaning and practical challenges that tested their dedication to participating in the ancient ceremonies. Rivers had to be crossed, mountains navigated, and hostile wildlife avoided during travels that could take weeks for the most distant communities. The shared hardships of these journeys created bonds among pilgrims from different bands, fostering the social connections that enabled cooperation on the massive construction projects that created Göbekli Tepe's monuments. The approach to Göbekli Tepe along the final ridge must have created profound emotional impact for pilgrims who glimpsed the sacred enclosures for the first time each season. The massive T-shaped pillars rising from their circular arrangements would have appeared like giants gathering in eternal council, their carved animal figures seeming to move in the shifting light of dawn and dusk. For people accustomed to the modest scale of temporary camps and natural shelters, the monumental architecture of Göbekli Tepe represented a glimpse into realms beyond ordinary human experience. The ritual purification that probably preceded entry into the sacred enclosures reflects practices found in later religious traditions worldwide, suggesting that concepts of sacred space and spiritual preparation have ancient roots in prehistoric ceremony. Archaeological evidence of water management systems at Göbekli Tepe suggests that ritual cleansing may have been required before pilgrims could approach the carved pillars and participate in the ceremonies that took place within the circular temples. The great feasts that brought together thousands of pilgrims represent some of the largest organized gatherings in human prehistory, requiring logistical coordination that challenges assumptions about hunter-gatherer organizational capabilities. The abundant animal bones found throughout Göbekli Tepe, primarily gazelle, wild cattle, and wild boar, represent not daily meals but massive communal celebrations where entire communities shared food in sacred contexts that strengthened social bonds while honoring the spiritual forces that governed their lives. The seasonal timing of major festivals probably followed patterns established through generations of astronomical observation, connecting earthly ceremonies to celestial cycles that governed agricultural activities and animal migrations throughout the region. The summer solstice gatherings would have celebrated the peak of solar power and natural abundance, while autumn festivals marked the completion of wild grain harvests and preparation for winter months when scattered communities would sustain themselves on stored foods and hunting through the lean season. The shamanic ceremonies that probably took place within the sacred enclosures may have involved altered states of consciousness induced through fasting, rhythmic music, and sacred substances that enabled spiritual specialists to communicate with ancestors, animal spirits, and cosmic forces that governed natural cycles. The animal imagery carved throughout Göbekli Tepe, vultures, scorpions, serpents, and wild boars, represents not prey animals but spiritual beings encountered in visionary experiences that connected human consciousness to otherworldly realms. The acoustic properties of the circular enclosures created natural amphitheaters where ceremonial music, chanting, and storytelling could reach large audiences while maintaining the intimate atmosphere necessary for spiritual experience. Recent acoustic analysis of the remaining structures suggests that sound would have reverberated within the enclosures in ways that enhance the emotional impact of ceremonies while creating sensory experiences that reinforce the sacred nature of these gatherings. The integration of astronomical observations into ceremonial activities probably involved careful tracking of celestial movements that enabled precise timing of religious festivals and agricultural activities across the scattered communities that participated in Göbekli Tepe gatherings. The alignment of some enclosures with specific astronomical phenomena suggests that the site functioned as both temple and observatory, where priest astronomers maintained calendrical knowledge that coordinated spiritual and practical activities across vast territories. The gift exchanges that took place during pilgrimage gatherings created economic networks that connected communities across hundreds of miles while reinforcing social relationships through symbolic transactions that transcended mere commercial exchange. The exotic materials found at Göbekli Tepe, obsidian from distant volcanoes, marine shells from Mediterranean and Red Sea coasts, and copper from Anatolian sources, demonstrate trade relationships that were probably maintained through ceremonial exchanges during religious festivals. The educational functions of Göbekli Tepe gatherings probably included the transmission of cultural knowledge, technical skills, and sacred traditions that preserved essential information across generations of oral tradition. Young people from scattered communities would have learned astronomical knowledge, construction techniques, artistic skills, and religious practices during extended stays at the sacred site, ensuring that essential cultural knowledge was preserved and disseminated throughout the region. The marriage arrangements and kinship negotiations that took place during large gatherings created social networks that connected distant communities through family relationships that prevented genetic isolation, while maintaining cultural unity across diverse local traditions. These social functions probably were as important as religious activities in motivating the long journeys that brought people to Göbekli Tepe from across the ancient Near East. The competitive displays of skill and craftsmanship that probably characterized pilgrimage gatherings would have encouraged innovation and artistic excellence while creating opportunities for recognition and status advancement that motivated individual achievement within communal contexts. The elaborate stone tools, carved ornaments, and artistic creations found at the site may represent offerings or competition pieces that demonstrated technical mastery and spiritual devotion. The seasonal departure of pilgrims after each festival cycle probably involved ceremonies that formalized spiritual insights gained during the gatherings while providing blessings for the journey home and the activities that would occupy communities until the next scheduled gathering. The cyclical nature of these events created rhythms that structured prehistoric life while maintaining connections to cosmic forces that governed natural and spiritual worlds. The training of spiritual specialists probably took place during extended residence at Göbekli Tepe, where individuals with particular talents for visionary experience, astronomical observation, or artistic creation could receive intensive instruction that prepared them to serve their home communities as shamans, astronomers, or master craftsmen. This educational function would have ensured that specialized knowledge was preserved and transmitted across generations. The healing ceremonies that probably took place at Göbekli Tepe would have combined practical medical knowledge with spiritual practices that addressed both physical ailments and psychological distress that affected prehistoric communities. The sacred nature of the site and the presence of spiritual specialists would have created ideal conditions for healing practices that integrated community support with ceremonial activities. The conflict resolution functions that may have characterized Göbekli Tepe gatherings would have provided neutral ground where disputes between communities could be mediated through ritual processes that restored harmony while preventing violence that could disrupt the peaceful cooperation necessary for maintaining the sacred site. The absence of weapons and fortifications at Göbekli Tepe suggests that it served as a sanctuary where conflicts were resolved through ceremony rather than force. The artistic inspiration that emerged from Göbekli Tepe gatherings probably influenced creative traditions throughout the region as pilgrims returned to their home communities carrying new ideas, techniques, and symbolic concepts that enriched local cultural expression. The standardized artistic styles found at related sites across the ancient Near East may reflect this cultural diffusion that spread innovations pioneered at the Great Pilgrimage Center. The decline of Göbekli Tepe as an active pilgrimage site around 8000 BCE probably reflected broader social changes that accompanied the transition to agricultural life and permanent settlements. As communities became more sedentary and developed local religious institutions, the need for centralized ceremonial gathering places may have diminished, though the sacred nature of the site was honored through the careful burial that preserved its monuments for modern discovery. As we contemplate this ancient world of pilgrimage and ceremony, we witness humanity's earliest attempts to create sacred spaces that transcended local boundaries while fostering spiritual experiences that connected individual consciousness to cosmic forces governing natural and supernatural worlds. The patient journeys of prehistoric pilgrims to Göbekli Tepe established traditions of sacred travel, seasonal gathering, and communal ceremony that continue to characterize human religious life across cultures and centuries. The gentle hills of ancient Anatolia witnessed the birth of organized religion as scattered human communities discovered that working together to create and maintain sacred spaces could generate spiritual experiences more profound than any individual could achieve alone. The legacy of these first pilgrims continues to inspire contemporary seekers who travel to sacred sites worldwide, following paths first established by the remarkable peoples who created humanity's oldest temple complex. As the gentle twilight settles over the ancient hills of southeastern Turkey, we arrive tonight at one of archaeology's most profound revelations: the discovery that humanity's greatest transformation may have begun not with the plough or the grain basket, but with the yearning for spiritual connection that drew our ancestors to create sacred spaces like Göbekli Tepe. Let your mind drift into this revolutionary understanding of human development, where the traditional story of civilization has been turned peacefully on its head. Close your eyes and feel the quiet power of an idea that challenges everything we thought we knew about how complex societies emerged, the possibility that religion didn't follow civilization, but actually created it. Picture yourself standing among the massive T-shaped pillars of Göbekli Tepe as archaeologists first began to grasp the true significance of what they had uncovered. For generations, scholars had accepted a simple, linear progression of human development. First came agriculture, which created food surpluses that enabled permanent settlements, which led to social hierarchies and specialized crafts, which eventually produced the temples, art, and complex religious systems we associate with advanced civilizations. This narrative seemed so logical, so inevitable, that it became the foundation for understanding human prehistory across the world. Yet here at Göbekli Tepe stood monuments that defied this comfortable sequence entirely. The massive stone pillars, elaborate animal carvings, and sophisticated architectural planning clearly represented complex religious expression and social organization. Yet they were created by people who still lived as hunter-gatherers, following herds and harvesting wild plants just as their ancestors had done for thousands of years. The implications rippled through archaeological thought like gentle waves disturbing a still pond, forcing scholars to reconsider the very foundations of human social development. The revolutionary insight that emerged from Göbekli Tepe research suggests that organized religion may have been the driving force behind civilization rather than its byproduct. Klaus Schmidt, the site's primary excavator, proposed that the spiritual needs that motivated construction of these magnificent temples created the social conditions necessary for all later developments: agriculture, permanent settlements, and complex urban societies. This represented nothing less than a complete reversal of traditional thinking about how human civilization began. Watch as this new understanding unfolds across the landscape of human prehistory. The seasonal gatherings that brought hundreds of people together at Göbekli Tepe required unprecedented levels of social coordination, labor organization, and resource management. Planning these massive religious festivals demanded communication networks that connected scattered hunter-gatherer bands across vast distances. Coordinating the construction and maintenance of monumental architecture required leadership structures, specialized skills, and economic systems that could sustain non-food producing craftsmen and religious specialists. The logistical challenges of feeding large crowds during extended ceremonies may have provided the crucial incentive for developing more intensive food production techniques. When hundreds of pilgrims gathered for weeks-long festivals, traditional hunting and gathering methods would have been insufficient to sustain such concentrations of people. The pressure to provision these religious gatherings may have encouraged experimentation with managing wild plant resources in ways that gradually evolved into full agricultural cultivation. Recent archaeological evidence supports this revolutionary interpretation through discoveries that reveal sophisticated food processing at Göbekli Tepe itself. Over 7,000 grinding stones have been found throughout the site, along with evidence of extensive cereal processing that suggests the inhabitants were already managing wild grain resources with unprecedented intensity. The abundance of these processing tools indicates that feeding large religious gatherings required systematic approaches to food production that anticipated the techniques later used in formal agriculture. The peaceful nature of this transformation reflects the spiritual values that motivated the entire process. Unlike later civilizations that often emerged through conquest and exploitation, the social complexity that developed around Göbekli Tepe appears to have been based on voluntary cooperation inspired by shared religious beliefs. The absence of defensive fortifications, weapons caches, or evidence of violent conflict suggests that the earliest complex society emerged through consensus and collaboration rather than coercion and domination. The timing of this revolutionary development coincides perfectly with the broader environmental and social changes that characterized the end of the last ice age. As global temperatures warmed and new ecosystems emerged across the Near East, human communities found themselves in landscapes of unprecedented abundance where wild cereals grew in dense stands and game animals flourished in numbers that could support larger populations than ever before in human history. Yet abundance alone doesn't automatically create complex societies. Many regions of the world possessed rich natural resources without developing monumental architecture, organized religion. What made the Göbekli Tepe region unique was the particular combination of environmental opportunity with cultural innovation that directed human creativity towards spiritual expression and communal celebration rather than individual accumulation or territorial expansion. The construction techniques required for Göbekli Tepe's monuments demanded innovations in engineering, mathematics, and project management that provided the technical foundation for all later architectural achievements. The knowledge gained from quarrying, transporting, and erecting massive limestone pillars created expertise that would eventually be applied to building cities, irrigation systems, and the infrastructure of agricultural civilizations throughout the ancient Near East. The artistic traditions pioneered in the carved animal reliefs of Göbekli Tepe established symbolic vocabularies and aesthetic principles that influence creative expression throughout the region for thousands of years. The sophisticated understanding of proportion, composition, and symbolic meaning evident in these ancient carvings provided models that guided artistic development long after the site itself was abandoned and buried. The social networks created through religious pilgrimage to Göbekli Tepe established patterns of long-distance communication, trade, and cultural exchange that became essential features of all later civilizations. The relationships forged between communities through shared participation in religious festivals created the trust and cooperation necessary for the complex economic interactions that would eventually support specialized crafts, urban centers, and political institutions. The educational functions served by religious gatherings at Göbekli Tepe probably included the transmission of technical knowledge, cultural traditions, and social innovations that accelerated human development throughout the region. Young people from scattered communities would have learned construction techniques, artistic skills, astronomical knowledge, and organizational methods during extended stays at the sacred site, carrying these innovations back to their home territories where they influenced local development. The calendar keeping and astronomical observations that guided religious activities at Göbekli Tepe provided the precise timekeeping necessary for coordinating agricultural activities across large territories. The ability to predict seasonal changes, coordinate planting and harvesting cycles, and schedule market gatherings became essential capabilities that supported the transition from hunting and gathering to farming and eventually to urban civilization. The resource management techniques developed to sustain large religious gatherings probably included early experiments with storage, preservation, and distribution systems that provided models for later economic institutions. Learning to accumulate surpluses for ceremonial feasts, coordinate contributions from multiple communities, and manage temporary shortages during festivals created organizational knowledge that proved essential for agricultural societies. The specialization of labor that emerged to support religious activities at Göbekli Tepe established precedents for the craft specialization that characterized all later complex societies. Master stone carvers, construction supervisors, astronomical observers, and religious specialists represented some of humanity's first non-subsistence occupations, demonstrating that societies could support individuals who didn't directly produce food if their specialized knowledge served important community functions. The decline of Göbekli Tepe around 8000 BCE coincides precisely with the emergence of fully agricultural communities throughout the region, suggesting that the site had served its historical purpose by catalyzing the social transformations that made farming-based civilization possible. The careful burial of the monuments may have represented recognition that the spiritual needs that originally motivated their construction were now being met through different institutions in permanently settled communities. The influence of the Göbekli Tepe model spread throughout the ancient Near East as the innovations pioneered there were adapted to different environmental and cultural contexts. Similar megalithic sites from the same period have been discovered across the region, indicating that the revolutionary approach to social organization through religious architecture influenced human development far beyond its original location. Modern implications of the Göbekli Tepe discoveries extend far beyond academic archaeology to challenge contemporary assumptions about the relationship between material progress and spiritual development. The recognition that humanity's greatest social transformation may have been motivated by religious rather than economic factors offers alternative perspectives on the role of meaning, purpose, and community in driving positive change. The peaceful nature of the civilizational transformation that began at Göbekli Tepe provides hope that human societies can achieve complexity and sophistication through cooperation and shared vision rather than competition and conflict. The evidence that our ancestors created their first great monuments through voluntary collaboration inspired by spiritual beliefs demonstrates possibilities for social organization that prioritize collective well-being over individual dominance. As we contemplate this revolutionary understanding of human development, we witness the power of spiritual vision to inspire practical achievements that transform entire civilizations. The hunter-gatherers who gathered at Göbekli Tepe to worship and celebrate created more than impressive monuments. They created the social foundation for all later human achievement while demonstrating that the highest human aspirations often emerge from our deepest spiritual needs. The gentle hills of ancient Anatolia continue to reveal secrets that challenge our understanding of human potential and the sources of civilizational progress. The recognition that religion may have created civilization rather than simply following it offers profound insights into the fundamental nature of human societies and the eternal relationship between spiritual meaning and material achievement. As the gentle morning mist rises from the valleys surrounding ancient Göbekli Tepe, we step tonight into the intimate world of daily life among the remarkable peoples who created humanity's first temple complex without ever building a single permanent city. Let your mind drift into the peaceful rhythms of prehistoric community life, where extended families moved gracefully across abundant landscapes following seasonal patterns that had sustained human societies for countless generations. Close your eyes and feel the quiet harmony of people who achieved unprecedented social complexity while maintaining the freedom and flexibility that characterized the most successful period in human prehistory. Life in balance with natural cycles, spiritual purpose, and communal celebration. Picture yourself awakening in a temporary camp nestled in the oak forests that surrounded prehistoric Göbekli Tepe, where the morning air carries the sweet scent of wild grasses and the gentle sounds of a community beginning its daily activities. This is not a permanent village with fixed houses and established boundaries, but a seasonal gathering place where several extended families have come together for the important work of temple construction and the spiritual ceremonies that give meaning to their mobile lives. Their dwellings are elegant temporary structures, circular huts built from wooden frames covered with animal hides and woven mats that can be assembled, disassembled, and transported with remarkable efficiency. The daily rhythm of life begins before dawn, as the most experienced community members step outside to observe the position of stars and planets that guide their understanding of seasonal changes and ceremonial timing. These astronomical observations aren't abstract scientific exercises but practical knowledge essential for coordinating the movement of scattered bands across vast territories. The rising of particular constellations signals when different groups should begin their journeys to Göbekli Tepe, when construction activities should intensify, and when the great seasonal festivals should reach their climactic celebrations. Watch as families emerge from their shelters and begin the gentle routines that structure each day of community life. The women and older children move toward the grinding areas, where over 7,000 processing stones bear witness to the intensive food preparation that sustains large gatherings at the sacred site. Using techniques perfected over generations, they transform wild cereals into nutritious flour through patient grinding, creating the bread and porridge that form the foundation of meals shared by hundreds of people during peak construction periods. The men and younger adults organize themselves for the day's construction activities, checking tools and equipment that represent the pinnacle of Stone Age technology. Their flint knapping stations reveal remarkable sophistication in tool production, delicate pressure flaking techniques that create razor-sharp obsidian blades, specialized chisels designed for particular aspects of stone carving, and the massive hammerstones required for quarrying and shaping the limestone monoliths that form Göbekli Tepe's magnificent temples. The children move freely through the camp, learning essential skills through observation and gradual participation in adult activities. Young girls practice the complex techniques required for processing wild plants, while boys begin learning to identify different types of stone and their appropriate uses in tool production. This integrated approach to education ensures that essential knowledge is transmitted naturally across generations while allowing children to discover their individual talents and interests within the broad range of skills necessary for community survival. The social organization that governs daily life reflects the consensual decision-making processes that enabled unprecedented cooperation without coercive authority structures. Community discussions about construction priorities, resource allocation, and ceremonial preparations take place in circular gatherings where everyone has opportunities to contribute ideas and express concerns. The absence of rigid hierarchies doesn't mean lack of leadership. Certain individuals are clearly recognized for their expertise in astronomy, engineering, artistic skills, or spiritual knowledge, but authority emerges from demonstrated competence rather than inherited status. The workday at Göbekli Tepe proceeds with the steady rhythm that characterizes all successful large-scale projects accomplished through human muscle power and hand tools. Teams organize themselves around specific tasks, quarrying groups who extract raw materials from limestone outcrops, transportation crews who move massive stones along carefully prepared pathways, and skilled craftsmen who shape and position pillars according to precise astronomical alignments and architectural requirements. The remarkable absence of evidence for violent conflict during the site's active period suggests that these intensive construction activities were accomplished through voluntary cooperation inspired by shared spiritual beliefs rather than forced labor imposed by dominant elites. The communal work songs that probably accompanied repetitive tasks like stone grinding and earth moving would have created rhythmic coordination while reinforcing social bonds that enabled sustained effort over the decades required to complete major architectural projects. The seasonal gatherings that brought communities together at Göbekli Tepe followed patterns established through generations of astronomical observation and environmental knowledge. The major festival periods coincided with celestial events and natural cycles that held deep spiritual significance. Summer solstice celebrations that honored solar power at its peak, autumn gatherings that marked the completion of wild grain harvests, and winter ceremonies that prepared communities for the lean months ahead when scattered bands would sustain themselves through stored foods and intensive hunting. The feast preparation that preceded major ceremonies required coordination of resources contributed by communities from across the region. Archaeological evidence reveals the remains of massive communal meals featuring gazelle, wild cattle, and wild boar that were shared by thousands of participants during peak festival periods. These weren't ordinary subsistence meals but sacred feasts that combined practical nutrition with spiritual significance, creating bonds of reciprocity and mutual obligation that connected far-flung communities through shared celebration. The craft activities that flourished during community gatherings enabled specialization and innovation that wouldn't have been possible in smaller, isolated groups. Master artisans could train apprentices, share techniques with craftsmen from other communities, and experiment with new approaches to stone carving, tool production, and artistic expression. The cross-pollination of ideas that occurred during these gatherings probably accelerated technological and artistic development throughout the region. The trading activities that accompanied religious festivals created economic networks that connected communities across hundreds of miles through exchange relationships based on reciprocity and mutual benefit rather than competitive market dynamics. Obsidian from distant volcanoes, marine shells from Mediterranean coasts, and exotic pigments from specialized sources all flowed through these ceremonial exchanges, enabling local communities to acquire materials and finished goods that enhanced both practical life and spiritual expression. The storytelling traditions that flourished during evening gatherings served essential functions in preserving cultural knowledge, strengthening social bonds, and transmitting the astronomical and technical information necessary for community survival. Master storytellers could weave together practical instruction about seasonal changes, moral guidance about social behavior, and spiritual insights about humanity's relationship to natural and cosmic forces. These oral traditions created comprehensive educational systems that functioned without writing while preserving essential knowledge across generations. The healing practices that characterized community life probably integrated practical medical knowledge with spiritual techniques that addressed both physical ailments and psychological distress. The peaceful environment of religious gatherings, combined with the presence of shamanic specialists and the social support of extended community, created ideal conditions for healing practices that treated individuals as members of spiritual as well as biological communities. The conflict resolution mechanisms that maintained harmony during large gatherings probably relied on ritual processes and ceremonial mediation rather than formal legal systems or punitive measures. The sacred nature of Göbekli Tepe provided neutral ground where disputes could be addressed through spiritual frameworks that emphasized restoration of community harmony rather than punishment of individuals. The success of these approaches is evident in the complete absence of weapons or fortifications at the site. The marriage negotiations and kinship arrangements that took place during seasonal gatherings served crucial functions in maintaining genetic diversity and cultural exchange across scattered communities. These social connections created the extended family networks that enabled economic cooperation, information sharing, and mutual support during difficult periods while preventing the isolation that could threaten community survival. The astronomical education that took place at Göbekli Tepe enabled communities throughout the region to maintain accurate calendars and coordinate activities across vast distances. Young people with particular aptitude for observational skills could receive intensive training in star recognition, seasonal prediction, and ceremonial timing that prepared them to serve their home communities as astronomical specialists who maintained the knowledge necessary for successful agriculture and religious coordination. The artistic traditions that flourished during community gatherings established aesthetic standards and symbolic vocabularies that influence creative expression. Throughout the ancient Near East, the sophisticated animal carvings, geometric patterns, and architectural designs developed at Göbekli Tepe provided models that guided artistic development for thousands of years while demonstrating that hunter-gatherer communities could achieve levels of artistic sophistication that rivaled later agricultural civilizations. The environmental management practices that enabled large gatherings without ecological damage demonstrate sophisticated understanding of resource conservation and sustainable living that prevented the environmental degradation that often accompanied later urban development. The seasonal nature of intensive occupation, combined with careful attention to waste management and resource regeneration, enabled the site to support unprecedented population concentrations without depleting natural systems. The gradual changes that led to the abandonment of this remarkable lifestyle around 8000 BCE probably reflected broader environmental and social transformations that accompanied the spread of agriculture and permanent settlements. As communities became more sedentary and developed local institutions, the need for centralized seasonal gatherings may have diminished while new forms of social organization better suited to farming life gradually replaced the mobile traditions that had created Göbekli Tepe. The integration of practical and spiritual activities that characterized daily life at Göbekli Tepe demonstrates approaches to community organization that transcended the artificial divisions between secular and religious life that often characterize modern societies. Work, worship, education, and celebration flowed together in seamless patterns that created meaning and purpose in all aspects of daily existence while maintaining the social cohesion necessary for complex collective achievements. As we observe this remarkable way of life that flourished 12,000 years ago, we witness alternative possibilities for human social organization that achieved unprecedented complexity while maintaining the freedom, flexibility, and environmental harmony that characterized humanity's most successful adaptations to natural conditions. The communities that gathered at Göbekli Tepe demonstrated that sophisticated culture, monumental architecture, and complex spiritual traditions could emerge without cities, agriculture, or centralized political authority. The gentle rhythms of seasonal gathering and community celebration that sustained these remarkable peoples offer timeless insights into human potential for creating meaningful, cooperative societies that honor both individual freedom and collective achievement. Their patient work in creating beauty, preserving knowledge, and maintaining harmony with natural forces continues to inspire contemporary communities seeking sustainable approaches to modern challenges. As the gentle twilight settles over the ancient hills of southeastern Turkey, we arrive tonight at one of archaeology's most poignant and mysterious chapters: the peaceful abandonment of humanity's first temple complex and its deliberate burial beneath tons of carefully placed earth and stone. Let your mind drift into this profound moment of transformation, when the communities that had gathered at Göbekli Tepe for nearly 2 millennia made the remarkable decision to close this sacred chapter of human history forever. Close your eyes and feel the quiet reverence of ancient peoples who chose to honor their past by preserving it in eternal slumber, creating one of the most intriguing mysteries that continues to captivate scholars and visitors alike. Picture yourself standing among the magnificent T-shaped pillars of Göbekli Tepe around 8000 BCE, as the final ceremonies draw to a close and the last pilgrims begin their journeys home, knowing they will never return to witness the great festivals that had defined spiritual life for over 1500 years. The decision to abandon and bury this sacred site was not made hastily or in response to catastrophe, but emerged from profound social and spiritual transformations that were reshaping human communities throughout the ancient Near East. The mystery deepens when we consider that Göbekli Tepe was not destroyed by enemies, abandoned due to disaster, or allowed to decay through neglect. Instead, archaeological evidence reveals a careful, systematic burial that preserved the monuments in pristine condition for modern discovery. This deliberate covering required enormous effort. Tons of earth and stone were methodically placed over the circular enclosures, creating the artificial hill that concealed these treasures for nearly 10,000 years. The theories proposed by scholars to explain this remarkable burial fall into several fascinating categories, each offering insights into the complex motivations that might have guided these ancient decisions. Some researchers suggest that the burial represented a ritual deactivation of sacred space, a spiritual process designed to neutralize the power contained within the monuments to prevent their misuse by people who no longer understood their proper ceremonial functions. This deactivation theory draws parallels with practices found in many later cultures, where sacred objects or buildings that were no longer in active use required special treatment to prevent accidental sacrilege. The careful nature of Göbekli Tepe's burial, with its systematic covering and preservation of architectural details, suggests a community that deeply respected the spiritual significance of their monuments even as they chose to close this chapter of their cultural history. The environmental changes that accompanied the end of the Younger Dryas period around 9600 BCE created new opportunities and challenges that may have contributed to the site's eventual abandonment. As global temperatures stabilized and the climate became more predictable, the fertile river valleys of the ancient Near East experienced unprecedented agricultural abundance that enabled the emergence of permanent farming communities. These stable settlements gradually reduced the need for the seasonal gatherings and nomadic pilgrimages that had sustained Göbekli Tepe for centuries. The transition from hunter-gatherer to agricultural lifestyles fundamentally altered social structures and spiritual needs throughout the region. The scattered bands that had once traveled hundreds of miles to participate in Göbekli Tepe ceremonies began establishing permanent villages where local religious institutions could serve their spiritual needs without requiring extensive travel or coordination with distant communities. This localization of religious practice made the centralized pilgrimage center increasingly obsolete. Archaeological evidence suggests that the abandonment process was gradual rather than sudden, with different enclosures being closed and buried at various times over several generations. This phased abandonment reflects the deliberate nature of the decision-making process, as communities had time to consider alternatives and ensure that important cultural knowledge was preserved through other means before finally closing the sacred site forever. The changing religious beliefs that accompanied agricultural development may have created ideological conflicts with the hunter-gatherer spirituality that had originally motivated Göbekli Tepe's construction. The animal-focused iconography that dominated the site's carved pillars, vultures, scorpions, wild boars, and serpents, represented spiritual concepts that may have seemed inappropriate or even dangerous to communities whose religious practices increasingly emphasized agricultural fertility and domestic animals rather than wild predators and scavengers. Recent research has revealed that the final centuries of Göbekli Tepe's active use coincided with increasing evidence of permanent settlement and intensive food processing at the site itself. The discovery of residential structures, water management systems, and thousands of grinding stones suggests that the traditional model of seasonal pilgrimage was already evolving toward more permanent occupation when the decision was made to abandon the complex entirely. The resource management challenges created by larger and more frequent gatherings may have strained the environmental carrying capacity of the region surrounding Göbekli Tepe. As populations grew and agricultural techniques improved, the sustainable hunting and gathering practices that had originally supported temple activities may have become inadequate to provision the crowds that continued to be drawn to the sacred site. The choice to abandon Göbekli Tepe may have represented environmental wisdom that prevented ecological damage from unsustainable use. The social transformations that accompanied agricultural development created new forms of community organization that reduced the need for the intergroup cooperation that had originally motivated Göbekli Tepe's construction. Permanent farming villages developed their own leadership structures, craft specializations, and religious institutions that could provide the social cohesion previously achieved through participation in pilgrimage activities and monumental construction projects. The emergence of writing systems and other technologies for preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge may have reduced the educational functions that Göbekli Tepe had served for generations of hunter-gatherer communities. As oral traditions were supplemented by more permanent record-keeping methods, the ceremonial gatherings that had once been essential for preserving astronomical knowledge, technical skills, and cultural traditions became less critical for community survival and continuity. The theory that Göbekli Tepe was deliberately preserved for future generations suggests that its builders possessed remarkable foresight about the historical significance of their achievement. By carefully burying the monuments rather than allowing them to decay naturally or be destroyed by later construction activities, they ensured that future generations would be able to study and appreciate their remarkable architectural and artistic accomplishments. Some scholars propose that the burial of Göbekli Tepe was connected to broader patterns of social change that affected multiple sites throughout the region during the same period. The emergence of agricultural societies created new settlement patterns that concentrated populations in river valleys and fertile plains, gradually abandoning the hilltop locations that had been strategically important for hunter-gatherer communities but were less suitable for farming activities. The peaceful nature of Göbekli Tepe's abandonment stands in marked contrast to the violent destruction that characterized the end of many later ancient cities and civilizations. The absence of burning, weapon damage, or other evidence of conflict suggests that the decision to close the site emerged from internal community processes rather than external pressures or military conquest. This peaceful transition reflects the consensual decision-making traditions that had originally enabled the cooperation necessary for the site's construction. The preservation of carved details and architectural features through the burial process has enabled modern researchers to study Göbekli Tepe's construction techniques, artistic traditions, and symbolic meanings with remarkable precision. Without this protective covering, weathering and erosion would have destroyed much of the evidence that now provides insights into prehistoric religious beliefs, social organization, and technological capabilities. The continuing discovery of additional buried enclosures through ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive techniques suggests that the full scope of Göbekli Tepe's abandonment and burial is still being revealed. Current estimates indicate that only about 10% of the site has been excavated, meaning that future research will continue to provide new insights into the motivations and methods involved in this remarkable preservation effort. The influence of Göbekli Tepe's abandonment on later cultural developments throughout the ancient Near East remains an active area of research. The skilled craftsmen, astronomical specialists, and construction supervisors who had worked at the site probably carried their knowledge to other communities, influencing architectural traditions and religious practices in the agricultural settlements that were emerging throughout the region during the same period. The modern rediscovery of Göbekli Tepe has validated the wisdom of the ancient decision to preserve these monuments through burial. The site now serves as humanity's oldest known temple complex and provides unprecedented insights into the capabilities and beliefs of prehistoric hunter-gatherer communities. The careful preservation achieved through burial has made possible research that continues to revolutionize understanding of human social evolution and the origins of complex societies. As we contemplate this ancient decision to close one of humanity's greatest prehistoric achievements, we witness the wisdom of communities that understood the difference between abandonment and preservation. Their choice to bury Göbekli Tepe rather than allowing it to decay represents a gift to future generations that continues to enrich human understanding of our shared heritage and the remarkable capabilities of our prehistoric ancestors. The gentle hills that conceal Göbekli Tepe today stand as testament to the foresight and reverence of ancient peoples who created something magnificent, used it wisely for over a millennium, and then preserved it for posterity through one of the most successful conservation efforts in human history. Their legacy reminds us that true respect for cultural achievements sometimes requires the wisdom to step away while ensuring that future generations will have opportunities to learn from and be inspired by the highest expressions of human creativity and spiritual vision. As the gentle starlight illuminates the ancient hills of southeastern Turkey for the final time in our peaceful journey, we arrive tonight at the profound legacy of Göbekli Tepe, a sacred site that continues to reshape our understanding of human civilization while harboring secrets that may take generations to fully unveil. Let your mind drift through the whispers of contemporary discovery, where modern archaeologists work with reverent patience to decode messages left by our ancestors 12,000 years ago. Close your eyes and feel the continuing dialogue between past and present, as this remarkable temple complex challenges everything we thought we knew about human potential while inspiring new questions that stretch the boundaries of archaeological understanding far into the future. Picture yourself standing once more among the magnificent T-shaped pillars as the morning mist rises from the Mesopotamian plains below, knowing that you are witnessing not just ancient architecture but the birthplace of ideas that continue to transform human knowledge in the 21st century. The recognition of Göbekli Tepe as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2018 marked the international acknowledgement of its extraordinary significance, yet this designation represents just the beginning of a story that will unfold across decades of careful research and patient discovery. The revolutionary impact of Göbekli Tepe on archaeological thought cannot be overstated, as its discovery has forced scholars to completely reconsider the timeline and mechanisms of human social development. The traditional narrative that placed agriculture before complex architecture, permanent settlements before monumental construction, and economic surplus before religious specialization has been peacefully but thoroughly demolished by the evidence emerging from this ancient hilltop. In its place, a new understanding of human development recognizes spiritual motivation and religious cooperation as potential driving forces behind civilization itself. The ongoing excavations at Göbekli Tepe proceed with meticulous care under the direction of Turkish prehistorian Necmi Carol and an international team of specialists who understand that they are working with irreplaceable evidence of humanity's earliest architectural achievements. Only about 10% of the site has been excavated so far, leaving vast treasures still buried beneath the protective earth that has preserved these monuments for nearly 10,000 years. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetic surveys reveal at least 20 additional enclosures waiting to be carefully uncovered by future generations of researchers. The application of cutting-edge technology to Göbekli Tepe research continues to yield surprising discoveries that refine and expand understanding of this remarkable achievement. Three-dimensional laser scanning creates precise digital records of every carved detail, while chemical analysis of stone surfaces reveals traces of pigments that suggest the monuments were once painted in brilliant colors that would have created stunning visual effects during ancient ceremonies. Microscopic analysis of tool marks on carved surfaces provides insights into construction techniques that demonstrate remarkable sophistication despite the use of stone implements. The international collaboration that characterizes modern Göbekli Tepe research brings together specialists from dozens of countries, each contributing unique expertise that illuminates different aspects of this ancient achievement. Zooarchaeologists from Germany analyze animal bones to understand prehistoric hunting patterns and ceremonial feasting. Astronomical researchers from Turkey calculate celestial alignments that reveal sophisticated knowledge of seasonal cycles. Anthropologists from around the world contribute comparative studies that place Göbekli Tepe within broader patterns of human social development. The influence of Göbekli Tepe discoveries extends far beyond academic archaeology to challenge popular understanding of human prehistory and inspire new appreciation for the capabilities of ancient peoples. Museum exhibitions worldwide feature Göbekli Tepe artifacts and reconstructions that enable millions of visitors to experience something of the awe that these monuments continue to inspire. Television documentaries, popular books, and digital media bring the story to global audiences while maintaining scientific accuracy and archaeological integrity. The conservation challenges faced by Göbekli Tepe require innovative solutions that protect ancient monuments while enabling continued research and public access. The construction of a massive protective shelter over the main excavation area shields carved limestone from weathering while creating controlled environments for ongoing archaeological work. Advanced drainage systems manage water flow to prevent damage to underground structures, while sophisticated security measures protect the site from vandalism or unauthorized access. The local Kurdish community that has always revered Göbekli Tepe as sacred ground continues to play essential roles in site protection and interpretation. The descendants of the farming families who first guided archaeologists to the hidden monument serve as site guards, tour guides, and cultural ambassadors who help visitors understand both the archaeological significance and traditional spiritual meanings associated with this ancient place. Their integration into the research and tourism infrastructure ensures that local knowledge and perspectives remain central to ongoing interpretation efforts. The economic impact of archaeological tourism at Göbekli Tepe provides sustainable development opportunities for southeastern Turkey while creating incentives for continued preservation and research. The new Göbekli Tepe Museum in nearby Anatolia houses artifacts and provides educational facilities that prepare visitors for meaningful encounters with the ancient site. Hotel construction, restaurant development, and transportation improvements create employment opportunities while generating revenue that supports both local communities and ongoing archaeological activities. The emerging understanding of Göbekli Tepe's role in the Neolithic Revolution continues to generate new research questions that will guide archaeological investigation for decades to come. Recent discoveries of residential structures, craft workshops, and water management systems challenge earlier interpretations that viewed the site purely as a ceremonial center, suggesting instead a more complex integration of religious, economic, and social functions that may have served as a model for later urban development throughout the ancient Near East. The symbolic The digital preservation initiatives associated with Göbekli Tepe ensure that detailed records of all discoveries will remain accessible to future researchers even if physical remains face damage from natural disasters or human interference. High-resolution photography, three-dimensional modeling, and comprehensive databases create permanent archives that support ongoing analysis while providing educational resources for schools and universities worldwide. The comparative studies inspired by Göbekli Tepe discoveries continue to identify similar sites throughout the ancient Near East, revealing a broader pattern of sophisticated prehistoric architecture that suggests the innovations pioneered at the Great Temple Complex influenced cultural development across vast regions. Recent discoveries at Karahan Tepe, Sayburk, and other locations demonstrate that the remarkable achievements preserved at Göbekli Tepe were part of a larger cultural transformation that affected human societies throughout southeastern Turkey and northern Mesopotamia. The philosophical implications of Göbekli Tepe discoveries extend beyond archaeology to challenge fundamental assumptions about the relationship between material progress and spiritual development in human societies. The recognition that complex religious architecture preceded agriculture forces reconsideration of traditional narratives about the origins of civilization, while suggesting that spiritual needs and cooperative ideals may have been more important driving forces in human development than previously recognized. The future research priorities at Göbekli Tepe focus on questions that will illuminate not just the specific achievements of this remarkable site but broader patterns of human social evolution during the crucial period when hunter-gatherer societies began the transition toward more complex forms of organization. Understanding how these ancient peoples coordinated massive construction projects, maintained astronomical knowledge, and created sophisticated artistic traditions provides insights relevant to contemporary challenges in cooperation, sustainability, and cultural preservation as we complete our peaceful journey through the world of ancient Göbekli Tepe. We carry with us not just knowledge of a remarkable archaeological site but appreciation for the endless human capacity for creativity, cooperation, and spiritual expression that transcends any particular historical period or technological level. The patient work of the hunter-gatherers who created this sacred complex demonstrates that the highest human achievements often emerge from communities united by shared vision and sustained by reverence for forces larger than individual ambition. The gentle hills of southeastern Turkey continue to yield secrets that expand our understanding of human potential while inspiring wonder about the achievements that dedicated communities can accomplish when they work together toward goals that honor both earthly needs and cosmic connections. The legacy of Göbekli Tepe reminds us that civilization's greatest monuments are built not through individual genius or competitive struggle, but through the patient cooperation of people who understand themselves as part of something magnificent and enduring.